It's me. It's the SEEP coming to you live this morning from Classic Room 208. It is what is it today? It's the 17th, I think. It's Thursday. It's the day before the first test. I'm going to rock this camera a little bit. There we go. So I can lean back in my chair and be all comfy. So some quick reminders. First of all, we're going to wrap up the slides here in a few minutes, but some important stuff. Don't forget you have an assignment due tonight by midnight. If you haven't got that done yet, I would really and truly appreciate seeing that on time. Second, the test is tomorrow. Now, some quick stuff about the test. First of all, there's going to be two parts to the test. The first part, everyone needs to do. Okay. There are going to be 5 short essay questions. You're going to need to pick out 3 of them to do. Now, if you can only do 2, you write the heck out of those 2. If you only know 1, make that one as beautiful as you can. Leave it up to me to decide what I give you. You don't need to do 4 or 5. Doing extra ones aren't going to get you any extra credit on this one. Please pick out 3 of the 5. Okay. The second section is going to be optional. I put an optional question on, an optional essay question, but that is if you want to get a 4 on the test, you have to do the optional question. That is going to be a requirement. And so if you're looking for a 2 or a 3, you got to just do 3 of 5. If you're looking for a 4, you've got to do 3 of 5 and 1 of 1. Now, how is the test going to work? Well, tomorrow we're not going to meet. What we're going to do instead is I'm going to upload the test to your class's classroom about 10 minutes before the start of class. Okay, so it's going to be a little bit early. Now, if you're in class for another class, don't jump out to start on your history test. Please don't do that. You'll have enough time, I promise. I'm going to upload it. You're going to take it. And then when you're done, you're going to hit turn in, preferably by the end of your class. I'm not waiting all day or all weekend for it. I want it by the time your class ends. I will be on the Meet, though, because I'm going to be here in case you guys need help. You can either chat me or you can hop into the Meet and ask me any questions you might need to ask. Last but not least, grades did go live yesterday. Apparently, it looks a little bit different than it did last year. So some people told me they couldn't see their grades, but I promise you there are history grades there. Click on the name of the class. There's this little tab that says grades. Click on grades. You'll see the different standards and the different assignments. If that's not working, please let me know. Maybe I can try to walk you through it somehow. I'm not sure because mine looks different than yours. Please, if you have any questions about content from this unit, or how the test is going to work, or the assignment, dude, I am just literally hanging out here with my little pop friends in my classroom, enjoying my cherry Pepsi and waiting for something to do. Okay, so please contact me. All right, I'm going to go into present mode here, and I don't know if I'm going to stay up in the corner or if I'll disappear. It's always a mystery. So if you don't get to see me again, take it in. It's so pretty it hurts. Anyway, here we go. Oh, I disappeared. Oh, even I can't see me now. That's okay. All right, so here's our goal for today. We're going to finish Reconstruction. We're going to finish the last 3 notes, which talk a lot about social issues in the South and the economy in the South. I did a little bit of a review with people. I kind of asked them what they wanted to know. Obviously, I can't hear you. So if there's something that you want to know, you need to chat me, email me, whatever. I'll help you out. I promise I'll set you up. And the assignment is due today, and then I'll review with you at the end again how the test is going to go, so you're not confused. I already did that, but we'll do it again because we don't want you to be like, ah. All right. So the first thing we talked about today, I'm gonna crack my cherry Pepsi. So everybody listen. Oh goodness. Okay. Oh, that was delightful. All right. Is the South before the Civil War relied on slavery to support its number one industry, which was agriculture. With cotton and tobacco being the major crops in the South, those are really work-intensive crops. There wasn't a lot of machinery back in the day. The tractor didn't exist yet. The combine didn't exist yet. They didn't have any of that stuff. And so human hands were really what drove agriculture. And obviously in the South, those human hands belonged to the slaves. Once the slaves were freed by the Emancipation Proclamation and eventually the 13th Amendment, the South had to rebuild their economy. They had to come up with a way to make things work. Now, I know the answer is obvious. Hire the freedmen, pay them to do the same work they did before. The problem is that is going to cut into the white landowners' profits, and they didn't want to lose money. And so they attempted to come up with some more creative ways to, well, let's just be honest, to cheat the worker out of money. Okay. Now, in some areas, right after the Civil War ended, there was kind of a creative solution on how to help the freedmen, the former slaves, get started in their own lives. And that was that in a number of areas in the South, plantation owners, the large farm owners, had their land confiscated or taken away from them, and it was given out or divvied up to the freedmen. So if I was a plantation owner and I owned 50 slaves, they would take my land away from me and they would divide it up among the 50 slaves, and they got to farm the land however they wanted to. And I was just kind of out. Well, eventually the landowner, or the former landowner, a lot of them sued, and it was seen as a violation of their constitutional rights to take away their property with no, I guess, real reason. And so those former slaves were kicked off the land. And so the first attempt at rebuilding the economy of agriculture was through something called the contract system. The contract system is very similar to what we're used to today. I, as the owner, write up a description of what your expectations are, how many days you need to work, how many hours you need to be there, vacation, sick, how much money are you going to get paid, and all those different things. And then I sign it, I hand it to you to read it. And then if you agree to the terms, you sign it as well. That's how my wife's business works. She works for Native American tribes. She helps them with their healthcare. She writes up a contract. She signs it. If they agree to the terms, they sign it. If they don't agree, they negotiate and come to some kind of compromise. Unfortunately, there's a lot of problems with this system in the South. First and foremost, most of the freedmen couldn't read and write. And so when they handed them a contract, white people could literally work whatever they wanted to into the contract and completely get away with it. The second thing, and this obviously kind of goes the same, is a lot of black people couldn't sign their name. And so an X became a legal signature. There you go. If you want to be lazy, you can always just drop an X on a signature line. It's really easy to steal your identity like that, though. In the contract system, the black codes were also a problem because you still had those situations where if a black person didn't have a job, they could be arrested, and you could hold the pay of a black person for up to a year. And so freedmen often felt like they were cheated in the contract system, along with a lot of poor whites who were also illiterate. And so the contract system kind of got put on hold and put in the background for something that was seen as a more favorable option. And that option was sharecropping. Now, in the sharecropping situation, the landowner rents his land to sharecroppers or the former freedmen and poor whites. A lot of poor whites are involved in sharecropping too. The difference is, rather than the land renter paying money, they paid with a percentage of their crops. So think about it this way. Let's say Mr. Seep, owned a plantation that was 100 acres. And before the Civil War, I had 50 slaves. They did all the work. I sat on the porch and drank lemonade all day and got fat and just got all the money. Now that the Civil War was over, I still want to drink lemonade, get fat, and make lots of money. And so what I do is I rent out, I'm air quoting rent out my land to a bunch of people, and they farm carrots and tobacco and cotton and, I don't know, cucumbers and pumpkins, and I don't care what you grow. But at the end of the year, I get half to 2/3 to 75%, whatever we had decided on, of your crop. Okay. Now, this sounds like a total scam. It sounds like I'm going to get a lot of crop, which I can sell for doing absolutely nothing. And that's kind of the way it goes. Okay. Now, there were positives and negatives to the system. From the landowner side, the positive is that you get to get half to whatever percentage of the crop without doing any work. The positive for the freedmen or the poor whites was they got to work a chunk of land where they were basically the boss. At the end of the year, you paid your crop, but you decided what time you started. You decided what time you ended. You decided if you wanted to work on Sunday, what you wanted to grow, all those different kinds of things. Okay. And so on that little chunk of land, you were your own boss. Another positive for the farmer is that, or the sharecropper, is that the landowner would also buy you all the seed, all the tools, and all the supplies you needed to work the land. And so as the landowner who sits on my porch and drinks lemonade, I'm going to go get you the rake, the ox to pull the plow, the seed, and all those things. All you've got to supply is the hard work. The negatives, for me, there really aren't any. I just get to sit around and make money for doing nothing. For you, you're going to lose a big chunk of your crop. But also at the end of the year, if you look in that picture, you have people that are holding cotton. When you go to sell your cotton because you are black or you're poor white, you're going to get less money for your crop, okay? Because they're going to peg you as somebody who doesn't know any better. Other negatives, in a bad year, you might not get as much crop, but you're going to still owe me the percentage we'd agreed to. And so you might not have enough money to get through the year. If you didn't have enough money to get through the year, you may have to come to me for a loan. I'm the only person you know that has money. Of course, I'll lend you the money, but you're not allowed to leave my land until you pay me back. And so a couple of bad years in a row could put you in such a bad hole that not only might you never leave my land, but one of your kids or all of your kids might never leave my land either. In sharecropping, it was really hard to get ahead. Now, if you're wondering what's the point of learning this, there's still places in the world where sharecropping exists. Most things now exist off the contract system. Now, some social issues in the South. Obviously, we've talked a lot about what it would be like to be black in the South. We started off that conversation by talking about the black codes, laws that put the blacks in a state of semi-slavery. They're not legal slaves, but the laws took away their rights and freedoms. The black codes were made illegal by the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment provided citizenship and equal protection under the law. Unfortunately, that was often ignored. A lot of the law in the South was white and believed that black people should not be given the same rights and freedoms. And so the black codes, even though they were illegal, were still happening. In other places, in a lot of places in the South, states decided and local places decided that the reason why black people had become so powerful in the South was because they could vote and they could elect people that were sympathetic with them, or they could elect other black people. And so Southern local places in Southern states, even though the 15th Amendment gave black men the right to vote, decided to try to find ways to take the right to vote away. And so what a lot of states did is they enacted one of three things, or multiple: the poll tax, the literacy test, or the grandfather clause. The poll tax is basically a system where you would have to pay to vote. Let's say in the state of Georgia, it costs $1 to vote. If a white person showed up to vote, I would go, it costs $1 to vote in the state of Georgia. They'd give me the dollar. I'd give them their ballot. They would vote, and then I'd give them their dollar back. If they didn't have $1, I'd just give them their ballot and let them vote. But if a black person came to vote, I would say it costs $1 to vote. If they didn't have $1, I would send them away. If they did have $1, I would hand them the ballot, would take their money and put it in my pocket. And when they got done voting, I would rip their ballot up. And so they just lost $1. In the literacy test, you could only vote if you could prove that you were literate. White people were asked simple questions like spelling their first name, what's 2 + 2, name 3 colors. African American people would be asked ridiculously difficult questions, which weren't even close to the same level as the white people, and then they would be deemed illiterate and told that they couldn't vote. A third way was the grandfather clause. Now, in the grandfather clause, you weren't allowed to vote unless your grandfather could vote. White people, their grandfathers had had the right to vote since the dawn of time. Black men, their grandfather had never been able to vote. But what if your grandfather's still alive? So you go and get him and you say, Grandpa, vote so I can vote. Well, then they're going to look at him and ask him, did your grandfather vote? And the odds of your grandfather's grandfather being around, especially back then, about, as Isaiah put it, -0%. All right, so a lot of African-American people were stripped of their right to vote. The KKK also became more involved. They used lynchings or hangings to intimidate people and obviously kill people in the South. If you were black, or if you were someone who was seen as an ally of black people, you were subject to violence, things like tarring and feathering, being drugged behind a horse. All right. These things happened as a form of intimidation and terrorism all over the South, with the goal being to force black people to move out of the area. Then kind of the final straw legally was the Jim Crow laws. They make segregation, or the separation of the races, the law in the South, where there are almost 2 of everything public: 2 drinking fountains, one that says whites only, one that says coloreds only, 2 entrances to movie theaters. In a lot of movie theaters, black people had to sit in the balcony and white people could sit near the floor. Restaurants wouldn't allow both races in. Hotels wouldn't allow both races in. Things were segregated, 2 of everything. Often the 2 things were not the same. For instance, drinking fountains. The whites only drinking fountain might have cool, cold water that came out of it, something that you would drink. Whereas the colored only drinking fountain might have like Monashaw water come out of it with like goop and stuff and yuck. Riding on a train, white people would be allowed to ride in a train car with a seat and a roof over their head and drinks and food, and black people would have to ride with the livestock out in the open. So it divided society. Schools were divided. Whites only schools, blacks only schools. The blacks only schools didn't get the same supplies and the same quality of teachers. Obviously, you can see an example there from the 1940s where it says Imperial Laundry Co. We wash for white people only. And I think you guys are probably mostly well aware of Rosa Parks. And that was far later in history than this, and segregation was still the norm all over the South. When people talk about systemic racism in the news, it's these kinds of things they're talking about that are ingrained in history and have become the norm in areas. The last slide looks at the end of Reconstruction. Why did it all come to an end, even though it seemed like some of the problems weren't really getting solved? Well, the reality of things is it's a twofold answer. Reconstruction comes to an end because, well, people were getting sick of it. And the other reason it ended was because of a compromise and a screwed up election. In 1876, Ulysses S. Grant's second term as president comes to an end, and we have an election. And in that election, Samuel Tilden, a Democrat, runs against Rutherford B. Hayes, a Republican. The election is extremely close. A lot of Northerners vote for Hayes. A lot of Southerners vote for Tilden. People who are sick of Reconstruction voted for Tilden. Regardless, Tilden won the popular vote, but neither side got enough electoral votes to become president. And so the two sides sat down and tried to negotiate. They came to a compromise, which is known as the Compromise of 1877. In the Compromise of 1877, the Republicans and Hayes agreed to remove the troops from the South and end Reconstruction if Hayes could become president. The South also agreed to accept the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, but as soon as the troops left the South, there was no one left to protect the Southern blacks and make sure that those rights were actually received by them. The Republicans agree, Hayes becomes president, and Reconstruction comes to an end in 1877 when the last troops leave the South. This left Southern blacks and sympathetic whites to the mercy of the Redeemers that we talked about yesterday. Redeemers were people who wanted to turn the South back the way that it was. Systemic racism takes hold. Segregation becomes the norm, and Jim Crow laws become a way of life. The black codes kind of get pushed to the back or made more technical in the Jim Crow laws, and it becomes difficult to be a successful black person in the South. Now, you would think the federal government would step in and say, listen, these rights are guaranteed by the Constitution. You can't take them away. But the federal government didn't help as much as you would hope. As a matter of fact, in a lawsuit called Plessy versus, or in a civil, in a Supreme Court case known as Plessy versus Ferguson, the Supreme Court decided that segregation was okay. They said separate is okay as long as it's equal. Now, there's a tricky word there, and that word is equal. If you look at that picture on the right, we've got like this beautiful, immaculate water fountain, and then we have this old crappy thing. Well, technically, those are equal because you can get water from them. If I was going to bring one freshman a pizza, soda, and ice cream for lunch, and I brought another kid a rice cake with nothing, technically those are equal because I'm providing you both with lunch. Equal is in the eyes of the people that were in power, and in the South, white people were in power. Kind of the last little thing that happens toward the end of the Reconstruction era is Booker T. Washington, who was an African-American civil rights leader, very similar to like a Martin Luther King Jr. type person, gave a speech called the Atlanta Compromise. Now, people were expecting the Atlanta Compromise to just bash Jim Crow laws and crush segregation and ask for equality, well, demand equality. Instead, in the Atlanta Compromise, Booker T. Washington kind of advised that black people should accept what was happening, keep working hard, keep following the course, and someday true equality would happen. That didn't sit well with a lot of Southern blacks and a lot of Northern whites. Now, at this point, the federal troops leave the South and Reconstruction, as we've been talking about, ends. Obviously, a lot of problems lingered and still last into today. Lot of not great stuff in that unit, to be totally honest. A lot of political stuff that might be hard to wrap your head around, but a lot of poor treatment of people, I guess, is the thing that sticks with me with Reconstruction, and the fact that that poor treatment would continue on 155 years later into our lives is pretty incredible when you think about it. The fact that the KKK is still a thing just is. So want to review quick. Again, I am here to help. If you're looking through your notes and you're like, I don't get this sharecropping thing, or man, what was a Jim Crow law, or black codes, or the 3 major questions that need to be solved. I'm here to help. I want to help you. I want y'all to do well. I'd love to do nothing but write 4s on tests, but you got to ask if you need me. Reminder, I'm going to share the test with you guys a little bit before class starts tomorrow. It'll be due by the end of class. There'll be 5 short essay questions. You need to do 3, do the best you can. If you want to get a 4, there'll be 1 optional question, and you need to do that optional question for a 4. If you're confused, I will be on the meet to help out, but you don't have to, you just got to take the test tomorrow. That's all I'm asking. Okay. Again, here to help. Please don't forget that. I'm going to, I'm going to feel successful if you guys are successful. So have a great night. I hope to see you tomorrow for the test. I'll talk to you later.